the greater percentage of people haven't seen the film, so I will sort of gear my presentation to not too many spoilers on the film, because I think it's a film that everyone really has to see. I like to start my presentations by reading the last 7 lines of Primo Levi's poem, The Survivor, same as the title of the film. Stand back, leave me alone, submerged people. Go away. I haven't dispossessed anyone, haven't usurped anyone's bread. No one died in my place. No one. Go back into your mist. It's not my fault if I live and breathe, eat, drink, sleep, and put on clothes. I think the theme of my book and the theme that ran through to the movie is survivors' guilt, and how the individuals who survived the concentration camps and had to start a new life were able to live with all of the death that they saw occur all around them, and then have to start a new life. In 2003, my father was in his late 70s, and he had lung cancer. And I knew he wasn't going to live much longer. So I sat down with an audio cassette tape because he wanted to tell me the story of his concentration camp survival. Now, Steven Spielberg's foundation had gotten his testimony. A couple of Holocaust museums have sat down with him and taped some visual and oral history. But the one critical question they never asked was, how did he survive? And it's in the how that permeates my whole existence, because what he experienced is what he brought to parenthood. I was born just a couple of years after he got out of the camps, and 1 year after he fought Rocky Marciano. Today we know it as post-traumatic stress disorder, but as a kid, of 10 years old, when you have a father who is prone to exploding violently at every little thing. There's stains on the ceiling of my house from cups of coffee that he would toss. He's broken every window in my house. And I got my share of beatings. Although my sister, she suffered the psychological abuse. And my younger brother, he may have escaped because he's 9 years younger than me. He's threatened suicide thousands of times. We've had to restrain him. And, it's from the least little thing that might tick him off. He once went into a library and saw a swastika on a book. And he ran out and he hid in a local park. So he had some really bizarre events. Yet, on the other hand, there were times that he could be normal. For years, I didn't want to hear about his background, because that might have been an excuse for his violent behavior and the beatings that I got as a kid. And for every time he would ruin Thanksgiving by having some sort of an episode. But at this juncture, in his late 70s with lung cancer, it was time to make some sense of things. I sat down with a cassette tape recorder, and it took about 20 cassettes to just get his memories. My wife set the manuscript. It was a small one because he wasn't very, his language wasn't very sophisticated, and I had no knowledge of history at all, and I had no knowledge of, I couldn't embellish what he was saying. And I got 75 rejections and one maybe from Syracuse University Press. Syracuse University has a large Jewish studies department, and they got a donor to sponsor the book on the condition that I bring some academic value to it. So the book at that particular time. The next section is written by a renowned boxing historian. So you get an understanding about what was going on in the American boxing scene at the time my father was fighting. And then we get his story, which is broken in half from the camps to his coming to America and boxing and how he adjusted to being in the United States. I want to share with you some vintage photographs and my father's his prized possession. When he was in a displaced persons camp, he saw a sign go up. General Lucius Clay was having a boxing tournament in Munich in 1947 to entertain the troops. And it was the Jewish Boxing Championships. And my father traveled to Munich, where he trained. And these are the only pictures that I have of him ever being in the ring, where he trained for the boxing tournament. And in the semifinals, he knocked out the light heavyweight. And then he came back 30 minutes later and he knocked out the heavyweight. So General Clay called him into his office and said, well, you can't compete in the light heavyweight and the heavyweight finals. Pick one. Well, he was a light heavyweight. He was only 174 pounds. But he wanted to fight, always wanted to fight bigger men because he was used to fighting bigger men. And those of you who've seen the movie, you know, understand that he came into this tournament with quite a lot of boxing background. So I'm going to show a picture. He chose the heavyweight division, and I'm going to show a picture of the knockout of the heavyweight, which those who have seen the film, it'll be kind of reminiscent of the knockouts that he had with the Jews in the concentration camps. He was given this by General Clay, and it's inscribed at the bottom to the outstanding boxer of the Jewish boxing tournament in Munich, Germany. And he clung to this all these years. He thought it was an invaluable piece of art that was stolen from a museum. But we did locate the artist, and we know it came locally from Germany, right near where the boxing tournament was held. But I have this, and hopefully someday it will go in copies. Now, who thinks a book selling 4,000 copies is going to be made into a movie? Well, it was republished in Germany. And one day, a renowned German artist walks into the bookstore, sees the book on the shelf, and he can't put boxing and the Holocaust together. So he buys the book, and then he decides he'd like to make it into a comic strip. So he runs it as a serial in the Frankfurt Allgemeine, which is like USA Today in Frankfurt, Germany, for 3 months as a serial. And then it comes out as a graphic novel in Germany, Der Boxer. It became one of the largest selling graphic novels in Germany. And then it was republished in 27 countries. Here's the Hebrew edition. It actually, in 2014, it won an award for one of the best graphic novels for kids. Although my book is a little R-rated and the movie is R-rated, this is to help Holocaust education for those a little younger. But that's not going to be enough, to make a book into a movie. So when it was published in Germany, a German film and television company contacted me, and we negotiated for an option for the film rights. And then after that contract was signed, a Hollywood producer came to me and said, a Jewish Hollywood producer said that this really would be a shame for a film to be made in Germany about the subject, which I thought it would be relevant to Holocaust education there. So he bought the rights from them, and brought it back to the United States. Now, Holocaust movies and boxing movies don't make money. So Jules Gilmer, who was a television writer, she wrote the screenplay on spec. It won the Blacklist Award for the year, which the Blacklist is a good thing. It means it's one of the best unproduced screenplays. Now, I read the screenplay. I loved the screenplay. It was a little like my book and a lot not like my book, which was okay for me because my purpose was in getting my father's story and name out. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the people that were involved in the film. And then I want to tell you a little bit about my father's true story, so that when you do see the film, you're able to put together a little bit of the true story with the story that Hollywood has put together. When they were talking about making the movie, one thing they kept saying to me over and over was, we're gonna leave your family with, know exactly what the words were, but with dignity. We're not going to do anything that might make your family look horrible. One of the producers, Matty Lesham, probably the person most responsible for getting this done. His father was a Holocaust survivor. Barry Levinson often tells the story of when he was 5 or 6 years old. His grandmother's brother came to live with them in Baltimore, Maryland, and they put him in Barry's room. Now, the grandmother's brother every night is tossing and turning and screaming in a language that Barry didn't understand every night. Apparently, he was having nightmares. Well, 15 years later, Barry's in a casual conversation with his family, and they say, oh, Simca was in the Holocaust. Oh, that explains that. Dar Zuzovsky, who plays Leah, her grandfather was at Auschwitz. Vicky Cripps, her grandfather was at Auschwitz. Ben Foster, as you know, is Jewish, a bar mitzvah boy. So this was a very Jewish film. Now, the film takes place in 2 concentration camps, Auschwitz-Birkenau and Jaworzno, which was a coal mine 35 miles north of Auschwitz, where all of the strongest prisoners were sent. In reality, my father was in 6 different, and maybe 7 if you count an airplane factory as a concentration camp, my father was in 7 different concentration camps and survived 4.5 years. What he had to do to survive Auschwitz and to survive Jaworzno. But for the 4 other camps, he had to actively participate in his survival. And just like in the film, where his older brother Peretz says, these are stories that we don't tell. 80% of all of the Holocaust survivors married other Holocaust survivors. Why? They didn't have to talk about the past. My father was in the 20% that married an American Jewish woman. So I'm sure at nighttime and other times, my father, with his nightmares, would have to explain them, and my mother would know a lot of the intimate details of his Holocaust experience, which were never shared with the kids. The kids, we got the abuse, and we got our mother telling us it's his background, excusing him, all the time for his background. So one of the camps that only recently has the internet had some information about survival in these camps is something that survivors never talked about because you couldn't talk about it. And that was Flossenberg with his brother. One person slept, the other person stood guard, that the stronger were killing the weaker, and cannibalism, which the film people, talked about that, but they just it was not. Now, a lot of the critics who looked at the movie and read the book do say that the movie is an easy way out because there's a lot more horrible things that went on that the movie doesn't deal with. And for me, the most asked question is, why did I write the book? And my father was in his late 70s. I knew he wasn't going to be around much longer. And he wanted to tell me those horrible things because he wanted to apologize for what he called as being a rough. And I wanted to tell him that I loved him. And having the book published accomplished that. And one of the best things that happened for him when the book was published was he was recognized by the National Jewish Sports Hall of Fame and was inducted into the National Jewish Sports Hall of Fame in 2007, 3 months before he died. So this is a picture of him at the induction into the National Sports Hall of Fame. I'm on the right, and he's in the middle, of course. And the boxing writer that came to his induction, this is only the second time my father was in a boxing magazine, and I'm going to show you the first one in just a few minutes. But so he wrote, an article on the induction, and in it, he asked me, why I wrote the book, and under this caption here, it says, Alan says writing the book helped him get a better understanding of his father. But here it says, I needed to tell his story. I needed to have the family understand who he was. By that, I mean, even the grandchildren, my sister's children, they observed a lot of his behaviors. So the damage of the Holocaust ran 2 more generations. Unknowingly, my sister would send her oldest son to their grandparents in Florida. But later on, we learned that my oldest son saw too many crazy things that my father did and was traumatized by that. And he doesn't even want to see the movie. So what I meant by I needed my family to understand, why he was who he was, is I was looking for some compassion for him and for some kind of healing. Now, so this guy has the rights. The screenwriter writes a screenplay that wins an award. Now they have to raise the money. Fortunately, Braun, one of the largest studios, supported the project. They had just made a lot of money from The Joker. All of these movies, these superhero movies make a lot of money. So they were able to support the film. Barry Levinson came on. So they were able to attract a very good cast. And the story they told of my father's survival, primarily what he had to do to survive Jaworzno. Now, the German officer that befriended him told him he was going to become an entertainer. And by entertainer, he meant he would be putting on boxing shows every Sunday. But what my father didn't realize, because there was a real boxing team at the main camp of Auschwitz, where they fought with boxing gloves and they had tournaments. But at the coal mine in Jaworzno, what they were setting up was called. Now, I first found out about these kinds of fights when I was a kid. I snuck into my father's room when they were out, and I started going through his closet. And I found he wasn't a scrapbooker. He had all these newspaper, like he would tear things out of the newspaper. But he also had Ring magazine from 1940. That he's in an article. There he is. He's in an article entitled New Faces. But, it's an article about him weighing only 110 pounds as a result of 3.5 years of slave labor. And it was during those days in the concentration camps that Harry learned how to use his fists. The German guards put on bouts between prisoners in which the contestants fought to a finish with bare fists, reminiscent of the gladiators. And then I found this article which said, above, Jewish refugee who fought 75 matches to a finish. So when you see the movie and they show a couple of these finish fights to the finish, that journalist that wrote this article knew about that, and he asked my father if he had any regrets. And my father held up his fists, which had been broken dozens of times. He had these big, ugly fists. And he looked at him and he was tearing up in his eyes, and he said, my regrets are the lives that passed through my hands. One of the things about the movie that was a little different than other movies that are biographical pictures. At the end, they usually show some pictures of the real person. For those of you who've seen the movie, they didn't do that. It's on the cover of the book. And this is his color glossy. I was thinking that they won't show my father's real picture in the film is because my father was a little bit handsomer than Ben Foster was in the movie, for those of you who've seen the movie. Now, this thing kind of snowballed when the filming was completed. The virus struck. So it's been in the can for a couple of years. They tried to sell the movie to a streaming service during the lockdown, but streaming companies said that the movie was too depressing. It's a Holocaust movie. It has its tough parts, but there are equal parts of hope, and there are equal parts of humor in the movie. And it doesn't take place all in the concentration camps. It's about a man trying to move forward in his new life in America. It first screened at the Toronto Film Festival at the end of the lockdown. We were in masks. I can tell you from seeing this movie on a laptop, on my TV, and on the big screen, I'm sorry that most of you won't have the opportunity to see it on a movie screen because it is quite different to see it on a movie screen than to see it on a TV. Because now it's going to be first shown on TV, so it's only going to be up for Emmy Awards. Now, Ben Foster is phenomenal, in this movie. He lost 62 pounds, and if you've seen the movie play Harry in the concentration camps, and then he had to bulk up muscle to play Harry, who fought the top two heavyweights of his time, Roland Lastarza and Rocky Marciano. And then his happiest moment was when he had to bulk up and play Harry as an older man, where he could eat anything that he wants. The story is also a little bit of a romance, because in my book, it starts in Harry's birth town of Belcato, where he's experiencing anti-Semitism. He came from a poor family, so he was forced to go to public schools. And he said that in the lower grades, the Christian teachers were women, and they were less hard on the Jewish children. But when he got to the middle school grades, he ran into a lot of male Christian teachers who are always blaming the Jews for killing Christ. So if he was playing a game of soccer and he would get kicked a lot, all he would hear would be Christ killers, Christ killers. And at age 16, he actually had a girlfriend that was involved. That was a daughter of his brother's smuggling partner. As the war approached, everybody was trying to get married, so they were arranging marriages really quickly. And my father was getting an arranged marriage to Leah, when a sign goes up in town saying everybody 16 years and older has to report to the fire station. And his older brother goes, doesn't come back. So his mother sends him and sends him to go find his older brother. And he helps his older brother escape, but the Germans catch him and they break his hand in the fire station door. And oddly enough, on my visit to Auschwitz, we stopped at Belkato and we looked at the fire station, which was still intact. And I'm looking at the steel door and I see some bends in the door. So I'm thinking, my God, did my father's hands get broken at this point there? And then he's taken to his first slave labor camp. So the only spoiler in the book is that in the movie, we see Leia taken away in a truck, but really my father was the one taken away in a bus. But they were separated anyway. And he came back at the end of the war. He came back to town to look for her. He couldn't find her. He came to America, and there was only one way of finding people when you didn't have money. You put an ad in the newspaper. And he was worse than broke, so he figures he's going to get his name in the newspaper by boxing. And she's going to find him somehow. That's a thread that runs through the movie. But he doesn't find him. But in real life, people from her town, and they told him that she's now living in Miami under a last name. And he arranged for a trip to Miami after my bar mitzvah. I think he took my bar mitzvah money to pay for that trip, puts us on a 24-hour train. And we get to Miami, we get to the hotel room, and I have to open up the phone book. Last name calling, is Leia there? And then one guy answers, he says, yes, but she's not seeing anybody. So my father says, well, tell her it's Harry, tell her it's Hertzka from Belkato. Okay. And then 10 minutes later, and he calls back, she'll see you, Hertzka. And that's as far as I'm going to go in the film, because the rest would be a spoiler. The story has a happy ending. I don't think my father's life did, but it's a Hollywood movie, and it's a really good movie and an important one, because for me, it asked the question that I asked in the book: what would you do? What would you have done to serve? And I'd be glad to take any questions anybody might have.
The White House piece now, or should we get
to
that?
Yeah. I'm sorry. So we got to Toronto, and then HBO had their own premiere in New York City, which again, I got to see it on a big screen. But at that premiere, I got to meet all of the actors that were involved. And, people who are at that highest level of whatever profession they are, they're really smart people. Then I thought that was it. That was my Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame, because I got to red carpet at both of them, and journalists were interested in Harry's real story and as opposed to the film story. But then I'm literally on a bus. I had to go to New York for a wedding. And I'm on a bus, and I get a call from one of the producers. How would you like to go to the White House? I had to think for a moment because I couldn't remember who was president. I'm 71 and my memory's a little going. And I was thinking, if it's Trump, I'm going to say no. But I said, oh, okay, it's Biden. I'm safe. And I said, okay. So I get to Washington. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is I got a test first. So that afternoon, we're going to meet at 4:00 downstairs. That afternoon, they give me a list of who's attending, as if I'm going to memorize the faces, and they're going to hold a screening. They're going to show the movie. And Ari, you said you recognized somebody that was there. Stuart Eisenstadt, the Holocaust Museum Memorial Council. I had the CEO of YouTube, various ambassadors.
I think Deborah Lipstadt was there.
Deborah Lipstadt was there. The Jewish Council of all these Jewish, some Benjamin Sachs, some Congress people. I didn't see any senators there. So once we get through security to the White House, they're having a reception in the Jackie Kennedy Garden. So it's me, Ben Foster, and Barry Levinson, and two producers. So we go to this cocktail party. They're serving wine, really expensive, great hors d'oeuvres at our expense. We probably paid, the taxpayers probably paid for that. And then an aide comes out, gets me and says, "How would you like to meet the president?" I'm not going to say no. She takes Barry Levinson and Ben Foster. We go to a private room. The president comes into the room. He calls each of us up. I get to tell him a little bit about my father. I get to thank him on behalf of all of the children of immigrants and refugees who had the opportunity that this country gave. And all the while, he's got his hand on my shoulder. And then he gives me a big hug as he leaves. He says he saw the trailer. He's got the film recorded. He is going to see it at night. He's got someplace else to go. But then we go back out to the garden. He gives a little speech about his involvement in Jewish life and Holocaust support. And then we're ushered into a 40-seat theater that was first put together by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, so he could watch the war, what was going on in the war in the newsreels. And again, on the big screen, movie's fantastic. And as we exit, there's a 4-piece military band playing the music from the movie, which was done by Hans Zimmer, who just won the Oscar for Dune. So that was my experience. And he's a really old guy. I'm a really old guy, but he's a really old guy.
Thank you for sharing the story. Thank you, Alan, for sharing the story about your father, the book, the graphic novel, the movie. So I see people have already shared questions. I'm going to open the chat right now as well. And we'll see what other questions people have in our last few minutes here. So hold on for 1 second. Not allowing me to change anything. Let me give it a shot. Okay, it's open. I guess here are some questions. Were you growing up? The movie discusses your father's big challenge in the movie. I don't know whether it was like in his private life, was religion. That his experience he grew up in a religious household when he was in Poland, and did that change because of his?
My father grew up in an extremely religious household, but he points to the time he lost his faith in God, and it's depicted in the movie. It's part of the movie. He tells that to my mother, who plays my mother in the movie. And it was the time that he came back to Belcato. And in my book, he came back to Belcato, not with Schneider, but with somebody else they wanted to exchange some of the German money for gold because they felt they were losing the war. But he came back to Belcato, and he saw that his sister had just been given birth, and the Germans took the baby away. They missed, the baby splattered, the baby hit and then they shot the baby. As a kid, my father loved to taunt guy. He loved to eat a big pound of bacon. We never belonged to a temple. I was bar mitzvahed, but I had to read the transliteration, to get through it. We became a non-religious family. Luckily, I married a Jewish woman who brought me back to the temple for my children. So my children do have some kind of background. in it. But my father came from a very religious household, and he could pinpoint the money, the moment. And in the movie, he says, "Where was God? When they threw that baby up in the truck."
Yeah, a very powerful movie, and not easy to watch, but very much worthwhile watching. And you guys have heard the story and the truth of the story, and it does come out in the movie. For me, one of the most powerful scenes in the movie was I doubt it happened, but maybe it did, was the fight on Yom Kippur, where they have the Avinu Malkeinu going in the background, and he's fighting. And I don't know if that's true or not. And I mean, people are going to ask you, is this true? Is this true? I'm not going to go through all that in the movie, but what happened to you when you were you involved in the actual process of making of the movie, or do you just kind of see it when it was done? And then what happened when you saw it when it was done?
I get a laugh out of that question, because that question's been asked so much of me and so much of Ben Foster, to whether he involved me or I involved him. But if you saw what he lost to 62 pounds, but if you saw what he did, they even took a trip to Auschwitz. He heard thousands of hours of testimony of survivors. I mean, he when he gets into a role, he really gets into a role. Once I read the screenplay, I had to say to myself, it's Barry Levinson. Am I going to teach Chopin how to play the piano? So I had no involvement, in the film. I was invited to see. I was invited for a set visit when they filmed the last part of the movie, where he finally gets to see his girlfriend again, and then he goes back to my mother on the beach. They use Tybee Island, Georgia, because Georgia has a big film industry and they give back money. But the real location was Miami, Florida. Remember, in the movie, my father had a fruit store. But when I went to Florida, it was the first time I saw fruit grow on trees. It was an amazing memory. And that is a true part of the story. I did go with my father to visit Leia. For
those of you who have not seen it, Alan is in the movie, not as Alan today, but as a young.
I only get yelled at. He doesn't take the strap out in the movie. I only get yelled at.
But what was your reaction when you said you weren't in on the process?
Yeah, a lot of the fictions lie in my family. My parents didn't meet that way. My mother didn't meet him until after he finished boxing, so she didn't go to the Marciano fight. I laugh. They had a skinny kid play me, but I was a chubby boy at my bar mitzvah. You see, I had this problem. My father was starved, so he thought fat people were healthy. So he made everybody around him fat. So fat people were healthy way back when. I don't know. I didn't get it. Something I had to overcome. Just a family full of eating disorders, just from being starved in the concentration camps.
I will ask one thing. I was going to ask about the fight with his friend. Did that really happen? That one scene?
Yes. He would say, everybody in my community were rounded up at the same time. I knew some of the men.
Do you have any idea what the film budget was, by the way? Kind of, is it
it started out at 25 million, and they ran out of money. I think they went like 5 million over.
Right.
Begging around at the end. So,
Jeff Kaufman has a question, and he wants to know whether your dad's PTSD was primarily from the Holocaust, but he was a fighter as well. So he was knocked out. I mean, he didn't win every match he played. So,
no, he got, as you could see in the film, it's a lot different when he was fed in the concentration camps, and then he had to fight another concentration camp inmate who was not fed, who was hungrier and weaker. So in my book, I describe, I say, I just tell you what my father said. When he first saw his first opponent, he said he saw a skeleton coming toward him. Uh, so, uh, so, those were the fights, and he knew some of the people.
Did he not talk about his boxing at all when you were growing up until that moment you said you found the box of the clipping?
Yeah,
did that never really come up?
He was around the neighborhood. They used to call him Harry the Fighter. I don't know if he was, because he wanted to fight everything, anything. He was ready for a fight. But at his fruit store, it was in an African American neighborhood with Jewish refugees. The Jewish refugee, that was where the housing, I guess, was cheap. So he did have a fruit store, just like in the movie. And in the back of the fruit store, he used to give boxing lessons to these African-American kids. And there was, and then at the end of the boxing lessons, I had to fight them. And invariably I get beat up. So he always used to put me into situations where I was getting beat up. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah, so that's what I knew about his boxing. His boxing was, he used to be a fighter. He's teaching these kids how to box, and here I get beat up.
Mm-hmm. Did he? So you basically interviewed him. You wrote the book. Did he see your final book? Did he see the graphic novel? Did he say anything about those two products?
He didn't see the graphic novel, and he was illiterate. He couldn't read or write English. He never learned. That's why when that newspaper and the newspaper man in the movie, there really was his name was Leonard Cohen of the New York Post. That was the guy that wrote the most explicit article about how my father survived there, and he was billed, as the survivor of Auschwitz. The pride of Poland that they use in the movie. Went other places, they never identified themselves as Polish, because what they felt was that the Polish people were just as anti-Semitic Polish. So when he's called the pride of Poland, in the movie, I go like this. I don't think he would have liked that.
Gail Geffen wants to know, which part of Brooklyn did you grow up in?
I grew up in, started out in Bensonhurst. My father used to give me $5, take the bus to Coney Island. And then we moved to Canarsie. And
okay.
Yeah, so I grew up in Canarsie, Flatbush.
Someone wants to know if you're related. Her grandfather was Moses Haft from Kenatop, Ukraine. Yaakov Haft, as his grandfather, was one of the founders of Israel. So I don't know if I guess the question would be, is Haft a common name, or have you been approached by other people?
It's not a very common name. And oddly enough, my father's name was Moses. My father's father was Moses Haft. That was his name.
But this person was from Ukraine.
No.
Who knows back then, given the moving borders?
Yeah.
So what has all this done for you recently? I mean, as you said, everything snowballed. You were rejected. You wrote your book, and 75 publishers rejected you.
The most important thing that it's done is that it's opened up some healing channels for me personally, for my sister, who has had a difficult time with her children, who were traumatized by their grandfather. So it's just opened up dialogue for them. And her son still hasn't seen the movie. Her daughter saw the movie for the first time yesterday. My son, this was the first Holocaust movie he was able to watch. I've never seen another Holocaust movie before. So, there was damage going down to 3 generations. So this film, and being able to understand who my father was and what he went through and the things that he saw. The most important thing out of this process is the healing that, we're working on, throughout our family.
in our last minute or two, can you say a little bit about your mom? A little bit about her portrayal in the movie, about her reality, what she was like, and life for her, and your relationship with her.
Well, I wish my mom was as great as Vicky Krieps, was in the movie. But oddly enough, uh, my mother, uh, she was somehow an angel sent by God, to get my father through the rest of his life. Um, she turned a lot of blind eyes to what was going on in the house. And my sister tried to get her to leave my father, but, she would always accept whatever behavior he was, whatever, by understanding his background, So um, she was with him in the end, and um, he died in.
Came up because we did a program about Barry Levinson with a film critic, and he
Yeah,
said, "I've seen this new movie. Everyone, you have to watch it. It's called The Survivor." And then I was like, I looked you up. I looked up actually I have to see who wrote it, and I found you. So thank you.
I'm glad you did. I think that we all have to remember, those survivors. I don't know what type of person I would be if I had the experience of going through a concentration camp. I really don't, and I don't know what type of parent I would be.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing story, and
I hope the rest of you who haven't seen the film, it's a really good film. It's a really good film.
It's on HBO. It's on HBO Plus. It is, it's beautifully shot. Really, the visuals are amazing. The acting is incredible, and now you know the truth of the story. So I hope you all watch it. It is not a date night movie. It's not a date night. It's a carve out some time, watch the movie. Alan, thank you so much. I'm so happy that we let you go to the White House instead of just hanging out. No, I'm so happy you went to the White House. I'm happy that people saw the movie there. Wishing you good luck in this continual.
And can I say one last thing?
Of course.
Ari Katz has a Yiddish cup. He pays his speakers with ball caps.
Well, he said he's going to the White House. I said, on one condition, I'm sending you the CSP hat, and you got to bring it into the screening room. And he had some challenges getting it. I think you got
Secret
security
Service
issues.
They don't want anything in your hands when you're going near the president. No cell phones.
I didn't want to get him arrested.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to send you a jacket to wear too. It gets cold in Albuquerque.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does get cold in Albuquerque. Sure.
Okay.
Sure, for sure.
Okay, everybody.
Sure. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this special program. And amazing true story. Life is crazier than movies, guys. Really. Okay, Alan, we'll let you go. Everybody, have a meaningful day. Those of you doing the photo workshop today, I'll see you in just a bit. Take care. Nice to see you.